These are the lesson 5.5 notes. They are in percent. We're starting the next section of our chapter and finishing up learning about percent. A percent is a part to whole ratio where the whole is 100. So you can write a percent as a fraction with a denominator of 100. Now if we think about the word percent, per means part. It also means to divide. It's the part of 100. A cent is 100. Like a centimeter. There's 100 centimeters in a meter. Or a centipede supposedly has 100 legs. Or a century has 100 years. Or a cent. There are 100 cents in a dollar. All right, so you know that word. Percent means per 100, right? So when we write that in numbers, if you have 60%, that means 60 out of 100, or 60 per is the divide line, and the 100 is in the denominator, the part of 100. And when we write that algebraically, n% is n over 100, right? So in example 1, we're back to using the base 10 blocks as hundreds. So this is a 100. Sorry. This is a whole, and each of the rows here or columns is 10, so it's a tenth. So if I count these up, 35% as a fraction in simplest form, I've got 10, 20, 30, 5 out of 100. And then we have to find it in simplest form, so you have to reduce it. Right? So I think, what's a common factor for 35 and 100? Well, they both end, this ends with a 5 and a 0, so I know it's going to be divisible by 5. Let me try that. If I divide both the numerator and denominator by 5, 35 divided by 5 is 7, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. And that is as far as it will go. 7 and 20 don't have any common factors. 7 is a prime number. Right? If I want to write 100% as a fraction in simplest form, that's all 100 of them are shaded in out of 100. And I know that any number divided by itself is 1. So the whole 100 block is shaded in. This is a 1. Now we're writing 174% as a fraction in simplest form. So we're going to write 174 per cent or per 100. And then I can see that I need to simplify that. So 100 goes into 174 one whole time and 74 hundredths left over. And I can see that I have one whole square and I have 74 left over out of the second 100. And then I have to simplify that. So I'm looking at 74. Well, I know it's divisible by 2, so I'm going to start there. And so that's going to be, go ahead and just bring the 1 over, and 74 divided by 2 is 37. And 100 divided by 2 is 50. And again, 37 is a prime number, so I can't simplify it down any further. All right, you have 3 U-tries on that page. And then looking at the key idea on the next page, Now we're writing fractions as percents. So we wrote a percent as a fraction by taking that number and putting it over 100. When you want to make a fraction into a percent, you have to do just the opposite. You have to take the fraction, and first you have to make it into a fraction with a denominator of 100, and then you can write it as the percent. Right? Write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, and then write the numerator with the percent symbol. So if we have a number like 1/4, and I want to go to 100, I know that 4 goes into 100 25 times. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do the same thing to the numerator. So I've got 25 hundredths, which is 25%. Okay? So if I want to write 3/50ths as a percent, I have to make an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. What do I do to 50 to get 100? I have to multiply by 2. And whatever I do to the denominator, I do the same thing to the numerator. Then 3 times 2 is 6. 3/50ths is the same as 6%. Let's do another example since we have some room here. What's another number that goes nicely into 100? How about 10? We could do 10. What about if we have 7/10? I have to turn 7/10 into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. 10 goes into 100 10 times. 10 times 10 is 100. Whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do the same thing to the numerator. 7 times 10 is 70. 7/10 is the same as 70 hundredths, or 70%. And a lot of you already know that one, huh? All right, there are 4 U-tries. All of them will have denominators that go nicely into 100. This is 1.5. Okay, that all goes together. And then we have a real-life application here. So it says the ones that are shaded here are the Midwestern states. So it says that a drought affects 9 out of 12 Midwestern states. What percent of the Midwestern states are affected by the drought? So it says 9 out of the 12 are affected by the drought, and we want to turn that into a percent. So the first thing we have to do, 9 out of 12. And then I have to turn that into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. Now that's a little awkward because 12 does not go evenly into 100. You're going to have to do that the same as when we had a ratio table and we couldn't jump straight from this number to this number. There had to be something in between. We're going to find some kind of common factor for 12 and 100. How could I get something that goes into 12 but also goes into 100? How about 4? I'll write you a note there. We're looking for a common factor of 12 and 100. All right, and we chose 4. Then to get from 12 to 4, I have to divide by 3. To get from 9 divided by 3 is 3. And now I have 3/4. And that one you probably know that 3/4 is the same thing as 75 hundredths. 4 times 25 is 100, and 3 times 25 is 75. So if I want to change that to a percent, it is 75%. All right, the percent of the Midwestern states that are affected by the drought is 75%. 75% is the same as 9/12. Okay. There is a U-try that is for you to try, but I did want to clarify a little bit because I had to read it a couple of times. It says, what if In that example that we just did, it rained in all of the Midwestern states. What percent of the states is all? Okay? They are just wanting you to make a connection between if all of something, what percent is that? And that is all of the percent notes.